Hello,
Hello,
and welcome to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Show,
That's right. I am Ryan.
and I am Eric.
There you go. And we are two real life brothers who work in the data and analytics industry. And if we got a good one for you today, folks.
Boy, do we. You know, Ryan, I'm so excited for today's show because what's the topic? It's data jobs are doomed.
Doomed.
Right? So I've got a data job. Is my data job doomed? So I'm ready to hear all about it.
Yeah. That is the topic of today's show with all-time great Super Data Brothers show guest, Santona Tuli, who I think holds the record for most appearances on this show. For a good reason. She's awesome, and we can't wait to bring her on.
I don't know. Aaron Wilkerson might have her beat. He's been on.
It's between those two for certain. Now, of course, folks, this is a live show, so it's more fun for you and it's more fun for us if you get your questions and comments and reactions into the chat. As always, we will shout you out if you let us know where you're watching from. Like friend of the show, Tom Wilczek, who is watching from frigid Chicago. You know, Tom, it's pretty damn cold in Detroit right now, too, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Tom is not only a Super Data Brothers show regular, but he also is one of my Lego friends. And so I have to ask you, Tom, have you received the new X-Men Lego set yet? And if so, how is it? And we've got Joe Yen watching from the Bay Area. Joe, welcome to the Super Data Brothers show. All right. So, data jobs. Are they doomed? We are going to bring Santona on in a second to let us know. We've got Michael Dunphy watching from the DMV. Welcome, Michael, to the show.
Yeah.
All right. So, Eric, I believe you have a montage of sorts.
Yeah. So the theme is data jobs are doomed. So I hope this video montage will put you in the mood for the discussion. Because we're all doomed!
We're all doomed!
You too are doomed.
We are doomed.
Perhaps we're all doomed, Henry.
Or you are doomed.
And you are doomed. You're doomed.
You're all doomed. You're all doomed.
Okay.
We are doomed.
Then we are doomed.
Then we're all doomed.
Those guys are doomed. We're all doomed. Who's flying this thing?
There you go.
All right. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Santona, it's good to have you here again.
It's great to be here. Thank you for bringing me on. I feel like I'm the harbinger of doom now.
Not to be dramatic about it, but so welcome back to the show. As always, good to have you here. I think that, the topic of today's show is obviously designed to be a little provocative, but there is a big question in the data industry right now, which is, what does the future hold for people who do data for a living? Regardless of what role you're in, whether you're a data engineer or you're working in business intelligence or you're a data analyst or a data scientist, I think everybody agrees it feels like there's some big changes on the horizon. And there's a lot of, I would probably use the word fear about what those changes might be. And are they going to be good for us or bad for us as individual professionals? And so we wanted to bring you on the show to kind of get your take on it, where you see things headed, in the data industry. Of course, it's December 2024, so it's a great time for hot takes at the end of the year. And this is one of the hottest of all. So before we jump into it, of course, a shout out. LinkedIn user. This is Steve watching from Berlin. Guten Abend, Steve. It's good to have you here.
Guten Abend.
All right. So, Santona, are data jobs doomed?
Yeah, thanks. So I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of factors right now that sort of has people thinking about like what's on the horizon. And I think one of the bigger ones is AI and how that's going to affect jobs. That's like, I definitely think that's a factor, but that's actually not like what I am mostly thinking about when we sort of, so the way that we come up with the topics for these, Ryan and I sort of like, what do you want to talk about? And so it's not like I have a whole lot prepped for talking about why data jobs are doomed, but it's definitely been sort of on my mind, and also like from the conversations that I've been having with senior folks in data right now, data science managers, directors, ML practitioners. It's come up multiple times recently. Like multiple people have told me that for the next job, they're not sure they want to have data in the title. And I know that there's obviously a lot of folks that do want to have data on the title, and people are data science is still hot, obviously. Um, and that's certainly another thing that we should discuss as well. This morning, Mark Eltsefon made a post about the title of a data scientist and how you can be doing data science even with a number of other titles, which I fully agree with. I've definitely said that in the past as well. So it's definitely not one thing. And I totally get the excitement around like the data industry, the data ecosystem. But yeah, at the same time, like multiple people have been like, well, I've been doing data work for a long time, but I mean, the other thing too is as you get more senior in a data role, as in any other role, it sort of diverges into like more of a product focus, right? And sort of thinking about the business and how the work really feeds in. So that could be a part of it. There's the folks that I'm talking to are sort of like, yeah, I mean, I have data science manager on my title, but really what I'm doing is I'm solving business problems or something like that. But yeah, the fact that like, and these people are transitioning to PM roles or engineering manager roles or things like that, which are in some ways a bit more stable. So yeah, that's got me thinking about it and sort of thinking about the history of rounds. I sort of think of it as like rounds of data hire and what that's done to the industry. So yeah, I thought it would be a good topic to chat.
It is pretty interesting, Shantona, and I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it just now, but it is kind of true that there's this, it seems like unending desire of people to move into data, like at the entry level. And you see that, I mean, I can tell you, like we're data content creators, our
what
content,
tool should I learn?
Our content is aimed at practitioners who are, I mean, really have, like, you have to have been doing this for a little while, I think, to really get our show in a lot of ways, right? And the content, the data content that is most popular by, I don't know, 10 orders of magnitude is the how do I get into data, right? You go to any platform, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and the stuff about like, here are the 3 languages you need to know to get your first data analyst job is infinitely more popular than anything aimed at kind of mid-career or senior practitioners in the data world. So there's this huge supply of people who want to get in. And there are lots of good reasons to get in. Like career in data has been very good to me. It's been good for my family. It's like, it's a great career, but you are right. And I hadn't really thought of it until just now. And I'm curious to hear more details of these conversations with people at the senior level, but I do see people I know at the aspirational level of the data world, when you get that director title or that VP title, who are kind of trying to get the word data out of their title and find some way to argue, I'm not a data person. I'm a business person who happens to have some data background, for example. So could you clue us in a little more, like, obviously don't share any details, but that could identify anybody, but could you give us some flavor from some of these conversations you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them is a close friend of mine. They're working at a retail, tech first retail shop, and he's basically saying, he's managing like 8 or 10 people. So there's that. So there's a lot of time just towards professional development of his team, but also he's sitting and thinking about what's going to move the needle for the business. So the projects that his team is owning, he's owning, and are sort of less about, and the other thing too, it's a data has so many different flavors. So let me be more direct. This is not an analytics team. This is a algorithms org that like is fundamental to how the business is run. And he's saying like, the decisions that they're validating with data or the experiments that they're running, it's, moving the needle for the company by multi-million or hundreds of millions of dollars, right? I might be off by a magnitude, but it's definitely several several.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, and that's really impactful. And if you say I'm a data science manager, that doesn't capture. And I mean, this is the same thing is true for, like, if you say I'm an engineering manager, it doesn't capture your level of impact either. But perhaps even to take a step further, perhaps when you say I'm a data scientist, it puts you more in a box than you might expect or imagine. And I think because it's so ill-defined, and there are various kinds of roles that all fall under data. So, like, technically, I have data in my title as well. I do a lot of product strategy. So I think that the title data is not going anywhere. It's going to be there. And similarly, like, operations research has been around for a while. Statistics, obviously, it has been around for a while. And in fact, like, I'm not sure that a lot of data scientists today actually know a lot of statistics or use a lot of statistics, right? So, like, it's been moving and it's been changing. And we essentially have business intelligence, which is a function, right? And then we have ML, which is usually a tool within a function. So that can be more like sort of algos or product or something like that. And this data can be anywhere in that spectrum, and it's just more descriptive to actually say what function you're fulfilling for the company and how that's affecting the bottom line. So this whole fascination with I'm a data scientist, which is the sexiest job of the 21st century, and I'm making $500,000 or something. I think that's just out the door, to be honest.
Yeah. So is it and as I was thinking, okay, who do I know who fits this bill? And then I was like, oh, I almost swore on the show. Whoops. Me, right? Because I spent so long in consulting and actually as a data practitioner, and now, I'm the VP of product, right? I'm not doing any of that hands to keyboard data work at all anymore. And I do think, like, as a a data leader at some point, maybe data is like a box that you have to break out of in order to have a bigger impact at some point, right? Because it is kind of viewed as like this, in many companies, this service thing. It's this thing that's off to the side that, like, we go to when we need something, and we get whatever. It's a service org, and we get the service from the data people, but they're not driving anything.
Right. Yeah, I think basically there's like two main functions, right? In any business, is you're either building or you're selling, and sort of the data team kind of floats through all of that. And again, depending on, like, in some cases, it is part of the building where ML engineers are building the core product. That's different, and that's still data scientist, right? That's what the title would say, probably in most cases. But yeah, so there's really these two functions. And data doesn't neatly fall into either of them, and it tries to go into both. But whenever you have to get down to the bare bones of a business, data is easily on the chopping board. And it's the other reason is it's a high ROI for chopping, because by chopping a fewer people, you save more money because data professionals are expensive. But yeah, so, like, is it a cost center or a profit center? And it's almost in every place it's a cost center, and that's the other side of that is that's sort of how data teams came to be, right? Is as a afterthought almost in many cases. Again, discounting, like, sort of the businesses that are foundationally, like, data up or algorithms up, is like, okay, I have a product, I have all these users that are using the product, and now I need to think about how I can track how they're using the product and how my customers are, when my customers are going to churn, et cetera, et cetera. And so then you bring in a data team. So again, like, it's just this auxiliary-ness of the function. And I know that a lot of, like, this is something that I think is very debatable, and I definitely welcome folks who have a different opinion to mine on this, and like, and I've heard a lot of people say, no, like CDO is an important role and it needs to be in the C-suite, otherwise you're sort of flying in the dark. And to an extent, I agree with that. I mean, I certainly do think that data is an extremely important part of doing business and making decisions, but I also think basically we've sort of axed ourselves in the foot by like in many cases we've overpromised and underdelivered. In many other cases we've overhired, like it's a sexy thing, it's everyone needs to have a data team, so let's just put together a team of 5 data scientists, even when we really just need one person who's able to run SQL queries or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I saw something recently about like how I can't remember I'm sure it was some made up number, but it was like some X percentage of ML models could have just been like a medium complexity SQL query, and would have given you the same result, right? A couple of thoughts on that. So one of them, I do think it's kind of like there's this core group, and I will say the data industry, I feel, is really driven by the crowd that flows out of the major tech firms and the startups around them, right? So, it's people went to Facebook and they met at Facebook and they decided to start a startup, and now now we have, and I don't know if this story is true at all, but now we have Fivetran, right? I have no idea where Fivetran came from. I'm just using that as an example. And the problems they solve and the way that ML and data fit into the way Facebook makes money is totally different than when I started my career at the power company. Like where we made money is like we shovel coal on the fire, and that's how they made money. And I use that as an example of like a place where you kind of said, so they made this at one point, that company I worked at did make a big investment. And we're like, oh, we're going to be doing data science. We're going to have a data science team. And in order to, this was in like 2016 or something, right? In order to do that, we need a data lake. So we got to get an on-prem Hadoop instance stood up and all this stuff. And they did all that without any real vision for how that was actually going to help them be more profitable in the business, in the utility business, which is a very hard, it's very hard to make significantly more money in the utility business than what you're already making, right? It's heavily regulated. There's opportunities for game-changing innovation are not there in many ways, and so you get this kind of wave that emanates out from the tech companies that eventually crashes on the shores of automotive firms and chemical manufacturers, and they just are in a totally different world. And when they try to do the things the tech companies do, and what I've seen is, a lot of times they have the cart way before the horse. In terms of data science and data teams and delivering value with data. The other thing I thought of was just so let me run this one by you, get your take on it. In this, is it possible? And I thought this when you're talking about the CDO and do we need an independent CDO? And at one point, there was probably someone pretty high up in the company whose job it was to ensure that the intercompany mail operated appropriately, that when I sent a letter to you, that it got into your mailbox in the office. And that has all been totally distributed, and it's the responsibility of individuals to communicate with one another now, right? Is it possible that there could be some element of this? Like, and this is kind of where AI comes into play. Do you think data roles are going to shrink in part because people are going to increasingly be expected through automation and AI systems to handle it themselves?
So I do have thoughts on this, but let me first say what I don't agree with in that analogy.
Yeah.
There's still someone who is responsible for make sure that mail gets to the right person, right? It's not when I send you a mail, I'm not thinking about how that mail is actually routed to you. I just know I'm selecting Ryan, and it's going to, and that person is the biz ops person, right? Or some sort of operations person, and that's the the company's businesses actually have 3 parts: the builders, the sellers, and then the people who
Yeah.
keep everything running, keep the lights on. And data can become and in some companies it is part of sort of the larger ops org, rather than reporting up to product or reporting up to engineering. Data is sort of more part of operations, on IT and whatnot. And that's a model that can work, where it's like this is like a core function that we need to get things running, to keep things running, and it's going to be a process more so than sort of innovation. And I do think that's fine. A lot of the times, I think we think that data teams and data jobs are about innovation, whereas it's really about like keeping things moving and showing you the data that already exists, and not really like making more or running more experiments, or producing something new. But to get back to your question, so I think that I'm a little bit like on the fence on this, because I'm not sure that we have done a lot of good over the last 3, 4, 5 years in like the tool proliferation sense, and sort of like everyone's claiming to have the sort of this is the way that like the whereas it's just a field where we don't have a lot of like literature or like true empirical evidence that this is the way to do something. So I think that there's a lot of different options, a lot of different tools, vendors, open or open source tools as well, and it's still, and I will say it probably will for a while longer, takes people to sort of put them together the right way to actually solve the problems at hand for any given company, business, or organization. Any attempt. So I'll go back to sort of my ML and ML ops, sort of thinking about ML ops days. There was this rush to build, let's say around 2018, 19, 20. There was this rush to build the ML ops platform, something that would work for basically any use case. And sort of it would figure out how to featurize your data, and then it would, it would featurize it, and sort of all aspects of it. And they kind of spectacularly failed, even if the spectacularness wasn't like ubiquitous or evident everywhere. They just never worked. And like I'm not gonna like name any companies, but like big companies that are like focused on like let's say utilities or some other really big infrastructure esque areas. They have spent very many millions of dollars to put together teams that would put together this platform that would be the one true MLOps platform for their oil and gas needs, and for their engine, and all of these things. And it just never worked. And then eventually it was deprecated, and then they built more sort of targeted MLOps things. And that's a thing, right? If you and it makes sense. Like that result doesn't surprise me at all, because your data, and sort of not just that your data is different, but like everything about the data is different, and what the model needs to represent is different. And simple example of this is CV versus computer vision versus language models, right? There are similarities, and sort of the core architectures of how sort of those models learn are similar, but like just about everything else is different. And you can create multimodal models, but again, like this sort of like two pieces that sort of come together. Anyway, so this is all to say I am doubtful that it'll ever be a turnkey. Let's plug in this box, and then I will have all the answers that I want, and like people are going to be able to just self-serve off of that and ask questions and stuff. To an extent, obviously, it can be done, especially with the large language models, right? I mean, today you can sort of give LLMs access to all the data that you have collected, and that's a big asterisk, right? That you have collected that is somewhere, and it'll sort of understand the structure and of your data, and you can ask it questions, and it'll give you back. But you still have to. Someone has to be designing the sort of. Someone has to be thinking about the business holistically and like, what data do we actually need to capture? Because there's the part of the work that's okay, let's look at the data and answer these questions. And then the more interesting and the more impactful work, which is okay, what are we trying to answer, and what do I possibly need? What fraction of that do I have, and what else do I need to go out and collect? And that, I think, is very much still then it's going to be like a human endeavor until, I don't know, eventually maybe everything is going to be taken over.
until real life turns into the Terminator films.
Mhm.
So we have a comment from Michael. I think dovetails perfectly with what you were saying. Being a problem solver and providing insight for business needs will always be in demand, whether you have data in the title or not. At least that's what I tell myself. I tell myself that too, Daniel.
I agree.
And then a couple other comments from people. So Mark says, when I was talking about CDOs, and he says, like when CEO was the chief electrical officer. Yeah, exactly like that, Mark. And then finally, we got Daniel watching from Heidelberg. Beautiful city. Great to have you here, Daniel. And then William is watching from St. Louis. And then LinkedIn user here. This is Lynn Bender, by the way, organizer of Day to Day Texas, which Eric and I will be at January 25th in Austin. So if you would like to meet Eric and I and all sorts of other great data people, are you going this year, Santona?
I don't think so. I haven't made up my mind yet.
Yeah. Not to put you on the spot
No.
with Lynn watching, but was curious. Okay. Do join us there. It's a great 2-day event. And if you want to register with code Super Data Brothers, all one word, that will get you 20% off your registration. I highly recommend it. It's my favorite data conference of the year. Okay. So that is kind of, there's, when it comes to these automated systems and, AI is going to do this stuff for us, I think there's probably different levels. Like if you ask yourself as a data practitioner, okay, is AI capable of doing what I do? It really depends on what you do, right? If you're in a seat, say, and I know lots of people like this, probably people earlier in their careers are more likely to be in this seat too, where it's like, well, really what you do is you use a BI tool to create visualizations for people who can't do it themselves. Especially very large companies, there's a lot of people who have that job. AI is getting pretty good at that, about creating a line chart, understanding your user's request for a line chart, and being able to create the line chart. So the value you can add, I would predict over time is going to be impacted like by your knowledge of a specific business intelligence tool and how to pull all the levers and click all the buttons to make it give you the chart that you need.
Tools are never a differentiator.
Right.
Sorry, I'll let you continue. But like
No.
for individuals who are data science are looking to break into data and sort of figuring out what skills they need and stuff, or even if you've been doing it for a few years, like knowing different tools, I mean, it might get your resume recognized by ATS, the tracking systems, but they're never going to be a true differentiator for you because tools are easy to learn. That's just it, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and you see that in job listings, right? Like in BI, it'll be, okay, we'd prefer that whatever, click. But if and then they'll list 8 other BI tools. That's fine too, because if click, you can learn Tableau.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to respond to, Ryan, is it's not unique to data. The fact that AI can do the job, somewhat well now, minus hallucinations, is definitely not unique to data. So in that sense, if we're going to be scared for our jobs, engineers better be scared of their jobs as well. It's just, it's so easy to generate code with the LLMs. And I really just think of all of that as a big positive. It just makes life easier. right? I still have to review the code, read the code, make sure it's not doing something stupid, and then add in the documentation that fits sort of my business and so on and so forth. So it's that aspect of it really doesn't scare me, or I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to, but worry me, because I think it's just making everyone's lives and everyone's jobs easier. And you don't have to be a deep X tool expert anymore. And I see that as a positive. I mean, there are some people for whom it will be a negative, folks that have sort of built the career security, job security around that talent. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the story of the job since the advent of the industrial age has been continuously improving efficiency, where people, they look at the world now and they say, oh, this level of efficiency gains can be a disaster. What's anybody going to do? Right. Everybody's going to be out of work. And then it continually doesn't happen that way. It's like we as we automate more and more and become more and more efficient, we're able to discover new, more valuable things that we could be doing instead. Yeah. And that doesn't mean individuals don't get left behind by that process. They do, but from a society perspective, I mean, and then the question becomes with AI, like, oh, well, is it fundamentally different because it's, the technology itself is, is intelligent and able to fill the unanticipated needs as well as the anticipated ones. And I'm open to that. It may be. I don't know. Like Eric and I talk a lot about this on the show and over beers, and it's just like, okay, when it comes to AI, what it's easy to overestimate its impact in the short term and probably underestimate its impact
in the long term. Like, I feel like eventually it's got to, if things keep going at any sort of trajectory, no matter the pace, eventually it will reach a point where, I mean, things will be, if there are still jobs as we know them, they'll be fundamentally different than what we know now, right? But like, I can't envision what that would be if you get an LLM that can make a decision as good as I can, right? As that any given expert can, then like what?
Yeah,
what's left for the actual meat people to do?
Right. But that's the metric, right? Like, is it doing the job better than you? How do you determine that, and who is determining that, right? That's and yeah, I mean, I was recently chatting with a couple of friends about like this generative AI and how to define it, right? I mean, I guess there's technical definitions, but it really doesn't feel like to me a well-defined thing, in the sense that, like, all ML, all models, actually, forget ML, all mathematical models have the power to take existing data and sort of fill out spots that there weren't data in, like with the predictions, right? That's how. And so now then the question is, are you like interpolating or extrapolating? And even that, like most ML models are extrapolating to some extent. Like, it's not like you're going to see the exact same inputs and so on and so forth. So like that I just don't think that it's a line. I think it's a continuum. And I honestly think that it's going to shift, because it kind of has to. And as we make better and better, sort of, let's call them AI, we're gonna have to sort of decide what is better, when it's not better, right? If I don't have an expert, or if I'm not an expert in something, or if I don't know an expert on something, I have no way of knowing if the machine is an expert at it or doing good at it, right? So like that expertise, I think, has to be there as well, just to make sure the machine's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I think we can all see this, or at least I can, in my interactions with OpenAI and ChatGPT, is that the areas in which I am not an expert, ChatGPT seems amazing. Yeah. But when I ask it questions about data and business intelligence, it just seems trivially stupid.
Yeah. Isn't there's some sort of name for that someone pointed out a long time ago, that like you're reading a newspaper and you're like, oh, this is so insightful and good. Then you see the topic that you're into and like, this is so wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then you instantly turn the page and go back to being enlightened by the rest of the articles that you're not very knowledgeable about. There's a specific name for that. I can't think
100%. Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely like a chat. It's
I'll
absolutely what
ask
using
I'll
chat.
ask ChatGPT what the
It will
name
tell
of that
you,
is.
right? And then you'll be blown away by how much it knows.
Uh-huh.
Then ask it a question about what you should do with your current BI team workload, and what it'll tell you will be trivially dumb.
It'll be like it'll basically be platitudes.
Yeah, it will, and that's kind of how they operate. I mean, they're very impressive, you know. But
They're
like,
meant. They're meant. The way they're currently designed, they're meant to impress you. They're meant to
Yeah.
please you. So that's the
Yeah.
other aspect of it. They're just going to give you
Right.
the answer that you want to hear.
yeah, like that wasn't an accident, right? It was. Yeah, it's like no, you're right. You should do that. You're great. We have a comment from Daniel. He says, for him, it makes sense if humans do the QS for LLMs and LLMs do the QS for humans. So it's like a, kind of a partnership between the machine intelligence and the human intelligence.
Okay, it's the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, coined by physicist Murray Gell-Mann. So,
Nice.
He was probably reading a newspaper and realized how impressive everything was, except the one article about physics.
physics. He's like, this is nonsense.
This is so wrong.
And then he turned the page. And he's like, oh,
Yeah. He's like, that's
oh,
not what, that's not,
this geopolitics article sure is interesting.
Yeah. Fun fact, Santona, you have a PhD in physics, correct?
I do. Yes.
There you go.
Which I these days when I read physics papers, I already have a bit of that anyway. Although I should, because I'm reading like journal articles, so I should have that all. But yeah, I definitely do. Oh my gosh, this is so cool! It's going over my head. I have no idea what these people are doing. But my little brother is also pursuing physics in my same field, nuclear physics. So I get to do a lot more physics with him now than like I would have expected to, having moved on from physics. So that's been great.
That's awesome. That's so it's the family
business. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuclear physics.
We went into BI. Your family went into nuclear physics.
Yeah. That's it is kind of it's fun to be able to like work with your sibling, though. I will tell you from experience, like it's having professional conversations with your siblings. It's pretty cool. Maybe you guys should start a podcast about it.
About nuclear physics.
Yeah.
That's great. It will come to you for you and Eric for pointers for sure.
You can be the super physics siblings or something. I don't know.
Go ahead.
No, I was just something that was in the back of my mind because you were asking for specific examples of folks as well. Another person I can think of is like this really and this really shows the lack of jobs more than anything else, but this highly accomplished person in data is sort of they kind of realized that the growth was kind of stunted for them within their company, and then they left. And now at that level or the next level, there's just like not a lot out there. So this person is looking at becoming an IC again in data, and that's and like again, like years and years, like almost a decade of like leading very high performance data teams. It's just there's too many. There's too many people that have gone into data and too few jobs, and too many times folks have sort of been, I guess, hurt by the data org not paying off. And it's just such a tough market right now, especially for the data title. Like I really want people should do what they want to do and they should pursue their passions and stuff. But we're definitely oversaturated with data professionals. That much.
Yeah. And there are because I posted an internship position to work for us with MSU on the data team, and there are lots of applicants. So
yeah,
it's the more data people are being made every day.
Yeah,
it is kind of. I mean, the trajectory of it. When I got into it, it wasn't even really something you could study.
Yeah, it's like before how did you get into data or like business intelligence? Is you happened to get a job doing it essentially. Yeah. There was no master's degree in data science, not really.
No.
Maybe you had a mathematical degree and that's how you got in, but there was nothing
come
specifically.
From math. You would study information systems. Like the closest thing you could take at Northwestern when I was there was like the database class. They would cover one lecture covered star schemas and analytical databases, and that was like the closest we got to any sort of analytics or data. I'm sure if I was in, there was undoubtedly stuff in more hardcore CS related to, machine learning and artificial intelligence at the time that I was just unaware of. But, from kind of like from more of the analytics, business intelligence, data warehousing side of the field, there was truly nothing to study as recently as 2010.
Yeah.
And now you've got people getting master's degrees in it.
Yeah. I honestly think that it's better. And this is, I'm making a blanket statement, so definitely come at me. But I have found in my experience that it's better to have come at data science from different fields and different backgrounds than sort of going through a formal data science training. And I think for me, like, especially, like not super recent, but, a few years ago, what it meant was that, so like if you were coming from physics, you knew your statistics really well. From a experimental physics point of view, or side, right? Or if you came from economics, then you knew statistics really well, and linear programming and all of that really well because of where you learned it from, which I think is just fundamentally, again, people are going to come after me, which I think is in some ways better than sort of learning something for the sake of learning it. Right. So it's always about like, okay, I need to solve a problem. I'm going to figure out how to solve it. And then I've really learned that technique, that process. Right. Whereas, I'm going to learn how to do this without any specific goal in mind. And I mean, I don't want to, it's not just physics or economics or math or something. A lot of amazing data scientists from like sort of the first, second wave are from like sociology backgrounds and stuff. Right. So again, like, I think that diversity really adds to the richness of the field. And so the other thing that I think has done us disservice is before these programs, formal programs were established, there was a period of informal programs, basically fancy job placement function, like I don't know what to call them, like, so basically you were getting trained to do data science, but again, like in a sort of a short condensed form, and you're just being taught technique A, B, C, D, and now you're trained in data science and stuff. And I think I'm glad that is mostly kind of in the past, and now the training is sort of coming from a more formalized place. But I still like, I can probably count on a couple of hands how many professors are there for the data heavy fields that are actually dedicating their time into teaching for the data functions at various universities. I do think that there's a dearth there of people who are really well versed in these topics. Like I'll tell you, like, and I know this is true for many other folks. Like I've been invited to be part of like UC San Francisco State University or something there to be part of the like board or whatever curriculum development for the and like this was even a couple of years ago, and I mean I was very flattered, but I politely declined because I didn't consider myself to be an expert to that level that I could be like, this is what should be taught for this field. And I think I might have declined, and the next two people might have declined, but someone said yes. And I'm just not, again, this is not that specific program.
Right.
Like generally, I'm not convinced that sufficient rigor is actually there for this field, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think of a couple things. You are really right. I mean, if I think about the guests that we have on our show, when we ask, okay, how'd you get into this field, which is, we usually lead the show with, we don't have to with you because you've been on the show so many times, we all know. It's almost never, I studied data in college, and then I got a master's degree also in data, and then I started working in data. I just find that the people, and again, it's not to put down that route, like that's a route to a good job, right? But the people who seem to have the most the most to say come to this field from somewhere else. And a lot of, in data science, it's a lot of people from physics, and in analytics, it's just from all over, right? A lot of them were
theater.
Yeah, not a lot from theater, but a few of us. Who did I meet? I met somebody else in data who was a theater major, and now I'm trying to remember who it was. And so like there's something to be like said for that road. I mean, when you professionalize something and you make there a path, then it kind of I sometimes worry it gets harder then to become that thing without going down that path. Like you don't have the credentials anymore. Whereas when I got into this field, like there really were no credentials that you could have, right? But the other thing is like when you talk about the professionalization of it, the upside to that, and I continually amazed by when I meet young people in the field who really only know, they don't know where we come from, right? They don't know the techniques or the tools or the names from previous eras of data. And that's, this is like recency bias, and we're a vendor driven industry. So the people who are out there really pushing certain ideas are going to be the ones that we're trying to make money on right now. But I really see this like when I talk to Joe Reese and I look at, Joe's work trying to bring data modeling back, and like how totally out of style data modeling went for a while, and how the young people I talked to just had no idea. Like they just had never lived in a world where, you would build the schema into the physical, like you'd build a physical schema for analytical purposes. Like that just wasn't something they did, and I think that, and I think you've hit on this a couple different ways, but like that's the upside, if there is one, if we can actually pull it off, to having like more of a professional track, is like, you should probably, if you're interested in analytics, you need to know who Ralph Kimball and Bill Inman are. And you need to understand what a data warehouse does and why we build them and why we don't, to be able to pull that tool out at the right time.
Right. It's evolution, right? The stories, you have to know the evolution.
Yeah. And I find in data, more than any, like, is a field where people really don't, right? Like they really, really don't. And maybe part of that's because for a long time, there was no way to study data. Like you just had to get into it, through something else. And that might be an upshot of the professionalization of it. But it is interesting, like you said, right? They were looking to build this curriculum, and someone out there felt they were like they had enough to say, to say this is what the curriculum should be. I'm curious, like, do you think? I sometimes hear people say, "Oh, it changes too fast," right? Like that's a problem. Oh, the technologies and techniques change so fast that what you learn in school is always so outdated. It's not even.
We're still writing SQL.
Well, that's the counter argument. What do you think of that statement, Santona?
Is the technology in data changing so fast that that the curriculum's always going to be behind?
Yeah, like so behind it's not even useful is something I've heard people say.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Most of the time, so I can tell you this from a physics perspective, and I believe it has to be true elsewhere as well. But what we're learning is just what our predecessors have done and have contributed, and how they've thought and how they've arrived at our current knowledge and what mistakes they've made. Right? We're taught to think like physicists, not necessarily. Like, sure, we learn classical mechanics and things like that, but that's more like, at the school level, middle school level, or high school level. In college and higher, what you're really learning is how to think like a physicist, how to think through problems. So it's really like not really about the tools or the techniques. Like I have to know how a Cherenkov detector works, right, to get to the current state of the art detector, because it's an evolution. So yeah, no, I don't think that it's going to be too out of date to be useful. I think it's like you can't go somewhere if you don't know where you came from, basically.
Yeah.
is my thought there. I was going to say something else. No, I mean, I really am for formalizing techniques, I am a little bit skeptical again of like, so any sort of field where it's sort of tooling for the sake of tooling, I am a little bit like skeptical of. It like has to be guided. You have to be guided by something, by some question that you're trying to answer. And one of the problems I have with formalizing data science education is I am worried that it goes too close, or that the way that it's practically done is too close to just software engineering, which I mean is again a very important field, and but it is very well formalized, I think, and you're not innovating within software engineering per se. The really smart minds are innovating how to do something, right? Like it's always about like taking the next step and like making a whole and pushing forward. So if a lot of these, which I suspect is true, a lot of the curriculum around data science is sort of, this is how you code up, a KNN classifier or something, then that is not the ethos of data science, I think. So it's like this mixture of, you got to know some coding, but you also have to know like statistics really well. You also have to understand how the business work, like that really sweet spot of data science, which again, like is really hard to find in one person, but you can like sort of put a team together, 5 data scientists, and they all have different backgrounds, and like it just works really well. I feel like we're going to lose that if all 5 of them are have a master's in data science from XYZ or something.
Yeah, you're probably right. One of the things we always say on like this show when people ask what should I be doing, is it's like you should study all your technical stuff, get your foundations down, learn your Python and your SQL and whatever, whichever branch of data you want to go into. But then I always say like, why don't you also read some fiction, actually? Like that can help you in your day-to-day job, because at the end of the day, you're solving technical problems for a business, and a business is a collection of people trying to accomplish something ultimately. And you need to understand them, right? The more you can understand them and what they need and what they want and how they're trying to get it, the better you will be at delivering it. We have a couple comments here I want to read before we wrap up. So going back earlier to a kind of our conversation about AI replacing people, Michael makes a point. Due to market incentives, AI is being sold as a labor substitute, agents, while underplaying it as a complement to increase productivity. I do think that's true, right? That's the most obvious. It's going to be, I predict for a little while here, it's going to be, oh yeah, you don't need call center people anymore because our agent can handle it. And you don't need, all sorts of stuff. I mean, I can tell you what we're looking at as far as this is concerned at Good Data is more about like, how can we help you automate or make it easier to do the semi-technical but boring stuff in a BI tool. Like if you build a report and then you need to send it to a certain group of people, if one of the measures hits such and such a threshold on the second Monday of the month, it's actually not that uncommon of a thing to want to do, right? And making it so that you can just describe that scenario and then have the BI tool understand it and do that thing is kind of what we're looking at. But like, oh, we're just going to replace the data analyst with some sort of agentic AI. We'll see. Eventually, probably, but like not on any immediate time scale. And then Michael also says the purpose of a degree like computer science is to set up a foundation to build off of. Abstracts are prioritized instead of specific tools. Same should apply in data. Absolutely. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. I want to thank you for joining us and being an incredible guest as always. I love having you on the show. So with the 5 minutes left, let's talk a little bit about, we've talked a lot about especially at the high end, and you reach a point in your career where, and I experienced this, to have the sort of impact you want, or the questions you get interested in answering start to lead themselves out of strict data roles, right? For me, it was in the product. But for me, more than anything, it was probably, I got sick of using BI tools and like thinking, oh, I could have done this so much better.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, let's prove it, right? Can I do this so much better? But what about the other end? So you're just starting out, right? And we've talked a little bit about training and what you need to know. But what if someone wants to get into, let's take data science because it's kind of your area of expertise right now. What would you recommend they do?
Well, I haven't actually thought about that in a little while. Can I be a Debbie Downer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can.
I think don't.
Right.
Yep. That's basically what Joe said.
When we asked Joe what should a young person do to get into data, he said, "Don't become a plumber."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a whole other conversation, but absolutely, like the skilled labor. I mean, we're definitely doing it wrong in the U.S. I know some other countries like Australia are a lot more like those sort of specialized fields are recognized and appreciated much more.
Yeah.
And sorry, this is also kind of a tangent, but I think we are definitely losing something by not so maybe I'll contradict something I said earlier. So I was just thinking like what's happening in the US right now, it kind of feels like is the apprenticeships are kind of gone, or you sort of learn some things on the job, but you don't really have a master that's really that really knows the craft and is kind of showing you the ropes. And I think that really hurts. Like if I go to a mechanic half the time, they're not doing a good job, and like surgeons are sometimes leaving instruments inside of people's bodies and stuff. So, okay, so
Right.
that's I think that is a whole other conversation. But as far as data science is concerned, or if you are someone who likes working with data, and have been exposed to working with data from your background or your schooling or something like that, there's certainly you have to be able to tell that story really well to break into the market right now, because it's so hard. You can't just say I want to do this. You have to be able to say I have been doing this, and this is how, and this is why I'm gonna be good at this job. But other than that, if you're sort of just excited by the title or the field, I would seriously reconsider it. And that's you can still end up there, but you just have to think about why you want to do it, what it is about the field that excites you, and then solve problems, I guess. That's totally unhelpful, because where are you going to go find those problems? But because I'm actually not a big proponent of just doing a bunch of projects and trying to boost your portfolio. I honestly, I don't know what works. It's just so, as Eric said, there's so many applications to any job job rec that you put out, that even as a hiring manager, it's just so hard, and it's just what are you going to filter on? So yeah, again, sorry for being a Debbie Downer. I clearly love tech. I love working at startups and sort of wearing different hats. I encourage people to go into tech. Tech is really fun, but don't box yourself into just data or just software engineering or something like that. There's a lot of different ways to solve the same problem, first of all, especially within a business. So just be open to alternatives and trying out different things. One of the things that helped me when I was first looking is having conversations with some folks and trying to sort of figure out what I wanted to do, again, coming out of a physics PhD. And multiple people brought up product management to me. And I was kind of I wanted to go into data. Sorry, I know we're running up against time, but I took the time to sort of understand what that was, because those two words didn't mean anything to me back in 2019, right? Like product management, what is product management? But they described it as this is what this role does, and one of the ways to get there is through data, or you can go more into product. And I think the way that I finally ended up sort of doing more product work is absolutely the right fit for me. I would have hated managing Jira tickets. I think for anyone, I definitely wouldn't want to be a scrum master or something like that.
No.
But definitely love thinking about product. So yeah, it's not one thing. Just be open to different things and learn what the different functions are within tech.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Santona. It's great to have you here as always. I did get a notification that our LinkedIn live stream crashed. So we are still live.
It came up like just right now, so I think we made it.
So we'll see if you are still watching on LinkedIn, let us know if we're still live there, but we are still live on YouTube. So as always, thank you for joining us.
Yep.
Insightful as ever. Where can people catch up with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm old school. I don't really do a lot of different platforms, but I do spend an inordinate amount of time on LinkedIn, which is it's a love-hate relationship for sure. More often than not hate it, but that's where you can reach me. I try to respond.
I feel you. I'm in a hate phase right now with LinkedIn. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Santona. I'm sure we will have you back in the not too distant future to help keep us up to date with all the developments in data.
I love the show. It's my favorite show. So
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, man. She's great. She's like an honorary brother at this point. Michael says about halfway through your catalog of live streams, really informative and helpful. Thanks for what you guys do. Well, thank you, Michael, for tuning in.
Thank you.
It's messages like this that keep us going. Tell your friends, by the way, that we're here. Okay. And then finally, Michael also says, being at the intersection of tech data and another industry allows you to bring value as two people.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. Domain knowledge is really important to differentiate. Absolutely. Especially right now. In the tech market in the United States in particular. I'm sure it's similar in other parts of the world. All right.
All right.
Anything else to tell the people about? I don't think so. Day-to-Day Texas, join us there. Yes, bring that up. Tuesday, December 17th. That is next Tuesday. If you are in the Detroit area, and I know some of you are, come and join us at the Downey Brewing Company in Dearborn for the Detroit Low-Key Data Meetup. I will be there. Are you going, Eric?
Maybe.
Eric might be there. Aaron Wilkerson will be there. Lots of great Detroit people. It's an excellent networking opportunity for those of you who are local to the D. If you're not local to the D, feel free to come in and visit. It's a beautiful place. I guarantee you'll have more fun than you think. Detroit is way nicer than the impression you get on the news. All right. And I think it's going to wrap it up. Day-to-Day Texas, join us there January 25th. Again, code Super Data Brothers to get 20% off your registration. Awesome conference in Austin. I have a great time there every year. And finally, next week, December 19th, two important things will happen. The first one is it's my 42nd birthday. I know. It's the meaning of life. The second one is the final episode of season 2 of the Super Data Brothers with none other than Joe Reese will be at 12 o'clock Eastern. So catch up with us then. And we can't wait to see you there. All right. I think that's it. All right. Well, there you go. If I want to thank Santona again for joining us. She is the best. And until next week, we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care.